Hey guys, tonight we're taking a quiet, shadowy stroll down into the underworld. Not the action-packed version filled with wailing and lava. No, this is the slower, bureaucratically inclined version. The one where you line up with the other recently deceased, clutching your travel documents, and wonder whether you remembered to pack a coin for the ferryman. Because tonight, we're gliding into the myths behind why Charon, the famously grumpy boatman of the dead, insisted on exact change. You're standing at the edge of something not quite dark and not quite light. Somewhere between a foggy alleyway and a sleep-deprived bank lobby. The ground beneath you is cool stone. There's a torch on the wall, its flame flickering with theatrical unease. And in your hand? A single, round coin. An obol, to be precise. It's surprisingly heavy for its size, as if it knows the role it's about to play. A woman with eyes like moss and a voice like gravel quietly confirms your name on a scroll. She nods and gestures toward a path behind her that wasn't there a moment ago. It smells faintly of river water and old incense. You step forward. The world hushes around you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, leave a comment with your location and the time where you are. I always love seeing where our sleepy travelers are listening in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The path curls downward like a ribbon unfurling. Each step you take sounds muffled, like you're walking through layers of velvet. There are carvings along the wall, figures with wings, snakes, birds, owls, and once, a man attempting to shake hands with a skeleton. You suspect he didn't get very far. At the bottom of the slope, the world opens up into a wide, marshy plain. And there it is, the river Styx. Its waters look like oil and shadows, rippling under a sky that doesn't quite exist. It smells faintly metallic, like someone recently sharpened a lot of scissors. Across the river, fog drapes over indistinct shapes. Hills, maybe, or buildings, or waiting souls. You can't be sure. Then you see him, Charon. He's not tall, not hunched, not skeletal, not monstrous. Just a man in a boat. His cloak is damp. His beard is impressive. His expression suggests he's been underwhelmed by the living and the dead in equal measure. He extends a hand, not for a handshake, but for payment. This is the moment. You open your hand and present the coin, an obol, usually placed under the tongue of the deceased, or between the lips, if your family was feeling particularly poetic. Or, in some cases, just stuck awkwardly to your forehead, which seems both unhelpful and unsanitary. Historians still argue whether the obol tradition was universally followed, or if it was more of a suggestion, a gentle nudge rather than a hard rule. But for Charon, the rule is firm. No coin, no crossing. His boat, his river, his rules. He takes your obol with a quiet grunt and steps aside. You board. The boat rocks only slightly. It's made of wood, but it smells like rain and memory. You sit on a worn bench, the planks groaning under your weight, and watch as Charon pushes off with a long pole. The boat glides forward. There's no conversation. Charon isn't big on small talk. You're just one of many, an endless parade of newly arrived souls with damp hems and questions that won't be answered. The river slips by on both sides. Every now and then, you think you see something just beneath the surface. A face, maybe, or a hand, or a frog with suspiciously human teeth. But then it's gone. You try to speak once, just to break the silence. Charon turns his head slowly, like someone being asked if they'd like to join a surprise interpretive dance. You decide not to push it. The ride is smooth and a little boring, which is a relief. You're dead, probably. The last thing you need is drama. Eventually, you notice the torchlight receding behind you and a dim glow ahead. There's a bridge in the distance. Not for you, though. That's for the gods, the immortals, and possibly that one musician who sweet-talked his way in with a lyre and a tragic backstory. The water around you begins to thin, or maybe your eyes just adjust. The boat slows. Charon gives you a look. Not unkind, but not exactly warm either. The look of someone who's handed you a receipt and is now silently willing you to move on. You step off the boat. Behind you, Charon is already poling away, ready to collect the next passenger with a coin and a confused expression. And you begin walking again. The underworld is ahead, full of judgment panels, rivers of forgetfulness, and at least one three-headed dog who may or may not enjoy chin scratches. You'll get to all of that. But for now, the fare is paid, and you're in. The mist coils around your ankles like a cat, unsure whether it wants affection or domination. You walk carefully, the ground beneath you shifting between damp gravel and something that feels suspiciously like very old carpet. Ahead, the path splits. Not dramatically, not like a heroic choice, but with the sort of bureaucratic blandness you'd expect from an otherworldly public office. You follow the left fork, mostly because it smells less like burnt radishes. The air grows cooler. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a soft bell, or maybe someone just dropped a spoon in another dimension. The fog thins slightly, revealing more of your surroundings. There are low, dome-like structures ahead, their outlines flickering faintly as if unsure whether they're real or just thinking about it. You pass a large moss-covered sign. The lettering reads, "Welcome to the domain of Hades. Please have your afterlife credentials ready. Take a number. Stay hydrated." It's surprisingly legible. Whoever carved it had excellent kerning. To your right, there's a small structure made of marble and exasperation. A single torch burns outside it, sputtering in the still air. You approach and find a stone bench occupied by a soul wearing an ancient helmet and clutching a papyrus scroll. He nods solemnly and points toward a nearby doorway where the words "first-time arrivals" are etched in several dialects. Some human, some more experimental. You step through. Inside, it's oddly well lit. The floor is polished, the air smells of old ink and dried rosemary, and a demigod at a desk is loudly arguing with a pigeon that may or may not be qualified to issue temporary passes. You stand quietly in the designated waiting circle, where the floor says, "Please hover here," in gentle capitals. A sleepy clerk eventually waves you forward. "Name?" she asks, flipping through a large book that hums faintly. You give it. "Cause of death?" You pause. "Unclear. Possibly metaphorical?" She squints at you. "That's our most common category." She scribbles something in the margins. "Welcome. You're on the standard mortal track. Please keep to the left. Don't antagonize any shadows, and remember, no coin, no complaints." "Got it?" You nod. "Already paid." "Of course you did," she mutters. "You look like someone who follows instructions." She hands you a smooth black stone and gestures vaguely in the direction of a large, yawning archway where souls trickle through at a tired shuffle. You pocket the stone and move on. The path is long, lined with low hedges made of silver ferns that gently hiss when touched. Statues dot the way. Some cracked, some whole, all watching with polite disinterest. Eventually the terrain flattens and opens into a marshy plain. The river Styx curves quietly to your right, no longer menacing, just damp and inevitable. It meanders like a retired snake. There's a ferry dock here too, several in fact, each with its own little sign and boat tethered to a post. Charon is here again, or another version of him? You watch from a distance. There are multiple figures in gray cloaks ferrying souls across several branches of the river, all silent, all exacting. Some of them have beards. One has an unsettlingly cheerful straw hat. Another appears to be chewing gum. You realize Charon isn't just a name. It's a job title, possibly a union position. Historians still argue whether there was just one Charon or many, or if the original ferrying spirit subcontracted the work once demand exceeded his rowing capacity. Some say the name became a title passed down, like a gloomy family business. Others believe each river had its own boatman, all operating under vaguely threatening middle management. You watch as a soul steps forward, hands over a coin, and is waved onto a small raft. Another soul, less prepared, fumbles, opens a pouch, and pulls out a carved button. Charon's reaction is swift. The boatman gently, almost kindly, points back toward the waiting bench. The soul shuffles away, muttering what sounds like, "It was all I had." The lesson is clear. Payment must be exact. Not close enough. Not, "Will you break this drachma?" Exact. But why? Surely the afterlife doesn't operate on tight fiscal margins. Surely the ferryman, mystic, eternal, and surrounded by fog, doesn't need to make change. Yet, the tradition persists, echoed in countless burials throughout the ancient world. You pass a small plaque beside the nearest dock. It reads, "No exceptions, yes, even for heroes." You chuckle softly. Farther along, you find a large corkboard pinned with various notices. "What 1 obol, minted 412 BCE, reward, your life back. For sale, boat polishing oil, smells like regret. Ask about our express line." You suspect someone's having fun with the signage. Just beyond the notices stands a quiet figure in a faded blue robe. He doesn't speak, but gestures you forward. You follow. The path winds past quiet pools and low, murmuring willows. You're not entirely sure if you're moving deeper into the underworld or just looping through its more scenic departments. At last, you reach a small overlook. Below, the river Styx branches into 7 winding streams, each one assigned to a different sort of soul. The newly dead, the ancient kings, the deeply confused philosophers, all have their lanes. The ferrymen continue their work, collecting coins, guiding boats, shaking heads at questionable currencies. One ferry bears a sign, "Closed for maintenance. See alternate death arrangements." You sit down on a smooth rock, the black stone still in your pocket, warm now, oddly comforting. You watch the whole system, the rhythm of it, the odd logic, the patient inevitability, and you wonder, what happens to the coins once they're taken? Are they stored in some celestial coin jar? Are they used to fund river expansion projects? Or do they vanish the moment Charon closes his hand around them, absorbed into the underworld economy like forgotten dreams? No one knows, not even the clerks. But the answer doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is that you paid. And you're here. The light in the underworld doesn't come from above. It simply exists, diffused through the air like a memory of daylight, soft and directionless. You walk slowly now, the ground beneath you firm and oddly warm, like sun-baked stone that forgot it was underground. Ahead, the path widens and becomes tiled, with little inlaid mosaics beneath your feet. You step over a scene of Persephone offering a pomegranate, a figure holding a lyre, and, charmingly, a 3-headed dog lounging on what appears to be a very small love seat. Someone had a sense of humor down here. You follow the corridor into what looks suspiciously like an administrative lobby. It's eerily quiet, with walls that breathe slightly, an architectural feature the Greeks never bragged about. A large sign overhead reads, "Welcome to Hades' Bureau of Souls and Passage. Please wait to be sorted." To your left, a series of archways lead off into various corridors labeled Clerical Limbo, Elysium Draft List, and Purgatorial Review Appeals. To your right, a spirit in a toga is gently arguing with a large potted plant. You consider helping, then decide this is probably not your jurisdiction. Directly ahead, a bored-looking attendant sits behind a curved marble desk, rolling a pebble between her fingers like it's the most interesting object in the underworld. She doesn't look up when she says, "Step forward, one at a time, please." "You do." She glances at you, then consults a scroll that unfurls with a papery sigh. She murmurs. "One obol, one soul, prepaid, courier class." You raise an eyebrow. "Courier?" She waves her hand. "It's a category, not a job. Means you came with purpose. You weren't just shuffled here." She stamps something invisible onto your chest. You don't feel it, but a passing soul leans over and whispers, "Ooh, nice category." You're handed a small tablet carved with your name and the symbol for cleared. It feels cold at first, then pleasantly warm. You ask where to go next. She points you toward a door labeled Orientation and Mild Existential Dread. You pass through. Inside is a circular room filled with rows of wooden benches and one large lectern at the front. A projection, possibly magical, possibly just very committed theater, flickers to life as you sit down. A booming but somehow sleepy voice begins. "Welcome, newly arrived soul. You are now part of the Hades administrative experience. Please remain seated and do not attempt to ask why the rivers hum." You glance around. A few other souls sit slouched on benches. One is polishing a coin obsessively, another is chewing a scroll. Neither of these seem productive. The voice continues. "Now that you have successfully crossed the river Styx, you will be directed to one of several departments based on your moral record, your heroic achievements, and, where applicable, your dramatic flair." You glance at your tablet, still glowing softly. Your fare, traditionally one obol, has guaranteed you entry into the first circle of review. Unpaid souls may remain on the banks indefinitely. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You are technically ahead of schedule. The tone of the presentation is mildly smug, like it knows you didn't read the full welcome packet. It continues. Now, a few historical notes. Charon's role as ferryman of the dead was formalized in the early myth cycles, likely absorbed from earlier Minoan death motifs and regional necrotic folklore. His job is to ferry souls across the river Styx, and occasionally Charon, depending on the celestial tide charts. You blink. Tide charts? The voice ignores you. Historians still argue whether Charon was truly a god, a spirit, or simply a metaphor for transactional death rituals. Some scholars suggest his insistence on payment reflects a deeper cultural anxiety about debt, duty, and the economics of grief. You nod slowly. That sounds exactly like something a bored philosophy student would say during an exam they didn't study for. The voice continues. It is critical to remember that Charon does not negotiate. Substituting your fare with trinkets, bartered favors, or interpretive dance will result in denial of passage. No exceptions. You're now deeply curious about who tried the interpretive dance. A shimmering diagram appears overhead, a labeled cross-section of the underworld. It shows the rivers, Styx, Acheron, Lethe, Phlegethon, and Cocytus, braided like a sleepy knot around the land of the dead. In the center is Hades' palace, flanked by bureaucratic chambers, judgment halls, and several gardens of unspecified alignment. The voice returns. Your current location is the pre-processing district, where most newly arrived souls are gently assessed. This is not a test. Please remain calm. You glance back. One of the other souls is trying to balance their glowing tablet on their head. You decide you're still the most grounded person in the room. Eventually, the lights dim. The presentation ends with a simple reminder. One obol, one crossing, exact fare only. Thank you for dying responsibly. You file out into another corridor where you're handed a map. It's blank except for the word forward. How helpful. As you walk, you begin to notice small details you missed before. moss growing in the shape of poetry, benches that hum softly when you sit, even a few floating orbs that light your way with firefly flickers. The underworld is, surprisingly, not all gloom and doom. It's a little like a very old train station run by librarians who moonlight as surrealist poets. You reach a tall column where a bored-looking official is carving names into stone. She gestures you onward without comment. You wonder if your name is on there now, or if it ever really left. Just ahead, you see it, a tall gate marked Designated Mortal Entry, Class Courier. A breeze blows through, even though there's no sky. You step through, tablet still glowing, curiosity slightly outpacing fear. Somewhere, in the distance, a fairy bell rings again. Another coin, another soul. And so the system flows on. You continue down the corridor, your footsteps muffled by a floor that looks like polished stone, but feels more like pressed velvet. The blank map in your hand doesn't change, doesn't glow, doesn't do much at all, really, except insist that forward is, in fact, still the way to go. You suspect someone in the Bureau of Souls had a good laugh designing this. As you walk, small plaques begin to appear along the walls, offering helpful tidbits like, "Please refrain from existential shouting. Our walls have ears and opinions. Smile, you're among the processed." You pass another soul headed in the opposite direction. He looks confused, holds up a papyrus, and asks if you've seen a second opinion booth. You shake your head gently and wish him luck. He wanders off humming a sea shanty. You wonder if he used to be a sailor or just really enjoys the aesthetic. Eventually, the corridor opens into a wide antechamber. The ceiling stretches high above, lost in mist. A low humming fills the space. Not quite music, not quite silence. More like the sound of moths reading out loud. A stone platform rises ahead, flanked by two massive statues, one of a hooded figure holding a scroll, and one of a skeletal hand cradling a coin. Their eyes glow faintly as you pass, but they don't move. You suspect they're more for ambiance than enforcement. And there, in the center, stands a figure cloaked in heavy gray wool, arms crossed, posture like someone who has waited centuries and expects to wait centuries more. Charon. Or maybe yet another Charon. It's unclear whether it's the same ferryman who took your coin before, or just one of his many temporal twins, each bound to different shifts, rivers, or metaphysical quirks. His eyes are deep-set and very tired, like someone who's listened to far too many excuses. He gestures and you step up. Without speaking, he holds out a hand. You place your obol on his palm again, though you're not sure how it returned to you. The tablet you were carrying has vanished. Perhaps that's how things move along here. Traded objects, past checkpoints, fading souvenirs of the journey. Charon studies the coin, sniffs it, and tucks it away into his sleeve. Then he speaks, just one word, verified. His voice is dry stone on dry stone. You wait, but he says no more. Instead, he turns and begins walking, slowly, as if each step measures time itself. You follow. He leads you through a narrow passageway that seems to stretch longer than it should. The walls are etched with thousands of tiny names, some in Greek, some in symbols you can't decipher, one in what looks like a sequence of polite coughs. All former passengers, perhaps. All souls who paid their fare. At the end of the hall, you reach a small chamber. It's spare but precise. A stone desk, a single torch, and two clay stools. Charon sits, gestures for you to sit across from him. He studies you, long and steady. Then, quite unexpectedly, he speaks again. You asked why the fare must be exact. You blink. Had you asked that aloud? He doesn't wait for your answer. "It is not greed," he says. "I am not a merchant. I do not hoard. I do not spend. The coin is a key." He pulls something from his robe. It looks like a coin, but when he turns it in his hand, it shimmers. Not gold, not silver, but something more conceptual. It reflects not your face, but your thoughts. Brief flashes of memory flicker across its surface. A summer breeze, the taste of mint, the way it felt to wake up warm. "It is weight," Charon murmurs. "Weight of a life." He places the coin on the table. It doesn't clink. It sighs. "The obol is balance," he continues. "A price not for the journey, but for its finality. The exact fare ensures the soul is ready. No more, no less. If you overpay, you cling. If you underpay, you drift." You nod slowly, the explanation settling in your chest like soft sand. "Historians still argue whether this was ever meant to be literal," Charon adds, voice tinged with the faintest amusement. "Some say the obol was symbolic. Others say it was a bribe. I say," he taps the coin, "truth wears many shapes." He leans back slightly. "Some offered jewels, trinkets, crowns. I send them back. Wealth means nothing here. Intention does." A pause. Then he asks you something completely unexpected. "Do you remember your fare?" You think for a moment. You recall the feel of the obol in your hand, the weight, the chill of it. But where did it come from? Who placed it there? You shake your head. Charon does not judge. "Most forget. It is better that way." He reaches across the table and slides the shimmering coin toward you. "Hold it," he says. "See?" You pick it up, and the surface shifts beneath your fingers. Images surface. A quiet street, a bowl of soup, a rainstorm through a window, a friend's laugh, a pet's snore. The way you felt reading your favorite book for the 100th time. "You paid with that," Charon whispers. You hold the coin tighter, it grows warm, then he takes it back, gently. "And that is why I insist on exact fare." He stands, and you follow suit. He opens a narrow door behind the desk. Through it, a path lined with small lamps stretches onward, each one flickering like a heartbeat. No map needed now. You know where you're going. Charon gives you a slow nod. "Safe passage, courier." And with that, he returns to his seat, already waiting for the next traveler. You step onto the lamplit path. The soft glow wrapping around your shoulders like a well-worn shawl. No wind, no rush. Just the hush of something ancient doing exactly what it was made to do. The path lit by the tiny lamps stretches ahead with a quiet certainty. Each step you take feels more intentional than the last, like you're finally being threaded along the precise stitchwork of the underworld's design. The lights sway ever so slightly, even though there's no wind, as if they're nodding gently at your progress. You walk at an unhurried pace, your shoes, if you're even still wearing any, making the faintest whisper against the smooth stone. Occasionally, you pass other travelers. Some walk alone like you. Others float, seated on cushioned air, deeply engrossed in their own thoughts. One soul seems to be composing poetry aloud to a nearby wall, which is responding with soft, approving hums. After a while, the path splits again. This time, there are signs. To the left, Judgment Court, 1, Standard Souls and Mild Misconduct. To the right, Orientation Track, B, Historical Briefing and Orientation Muffins. You hesitate. The word muffins tempts you for a moment, but you remember you're on the courier track. Somewhere in the mists of your memory, that still feels important. You stay straight ahead. Another lamp flickers in approval. A short time later, you come upon a low building shaped like a turtle shell. There's a gentle harp sound playing somewhere inside. The door opens as you approach, revealing a waiting room filled with scrolls, comfortable chairs, and a refreshment table with what appears to be spectral tea. It smells of lavender and lukewarm memory. Sitting behind a desk is an attendant. Not a ghost, not a god, but something in between. She's wearing a tunic with the phrase, "Ask me about your afterlife," embroidered in shimmering blue thread. She smiles. Welcome to the Underworld Bureau of Internal Structure and Placement Logistics. Or, as we like to call it, Bob. You blink. Bob? She nods. It was easier than the acronym. Try saying UBISPL out loud 3 times fast. She chuckles softly. Only Hermes ever managed it, and he cheated. She gestures to a seat. You settle in. She flips through a large tablet. Let's just review your intake. You crossed with the correct fare. You had no false tokens, no improper obels, and you didn't attempt to offer interpretive dance. Excellent. Now, since you're classified as a courier, we're going to give you the internal layout tour. You raise an eyebrow. Is there a map this time? She snorts. Oh no, maps are for the upper levels. Down here you navigate with intention. Which is? Mostly vibes and spiritual GPS. She places a small hourglass on the table between you. The sand inside flows upward, which is somehow more soothing than disorienting. Now then, she says, settling in. Let's talk about the underworld structure. It's more complicated than most remember. She waves a hand, and the air fills with soft light and floating images. First, we've got the 5 rivers. You've met Styx already. She's the big one. Oaths, boundaries, grudges. Moody, a bit high maintenance but very efficient. She points at a silvery blue stream. Then there's Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Souls destined for reincarnation take a sip, forget everything, and try again. Sort of like clicking refresh on your existence. You watch a few soul-shaped lights float toward Lethe and pause at its bank, dipping invisible cups into its waters. A few giggle. 1 hiccups. Historians still argue whether Lethe's effects are permanent, or if some memories sneak through in dreams. Personally, she adds, I think a few regrets always tag along, just to keep things interesting. You nod, entranced by the images. There's also Charon, the river of sorrow. Think of it like a cosmic sponge. It soaks up the grief and wailing. Some souls linger near it, dramatic types. Good for brooding. She swipes left in the air. Phlegethon's the river of fire. That one loops near Tartarus. Not actually hot, mind you. More of a metaphorical flame. Used mostly for purification rituals and, on rare occasions, underworld barbecues. Very exclusive. And lastly, she says, Cocytus, the river of lamentation. Beautiful, really. Like an endless choir humming a sad lullaby. Very popular with ancient poets. Each river glows briefly as she names it, their paths weaving through the dark in elegant spirals. Most souls never even see all 5. You're lucky, she says, sipping her spectral tea. Courier class gets the whole tour. We like to think you've earned it. You're about to ask what exactly you're meant to be delivering, but she cuts you off with a knowing smile. We'll get there. Another gesture, and a map of the underworld blooms before you. Not physical, but conceptual. You see labeled zones. Asphodel meadows, faintly beige, soothing, bland. Elysium, softly glowing, with soundscapes of harp music and distant applause. Tartarus, dark and echoing, yet oddly well organized. Palace of Hades, enormous, quiet, full of paperwork. Cerberus's Nap Pavilion. Do not disturb sign prominently displayed. She points to a blinking dot in the middle of it all. That's you. You stare. Why am I in the middle? Because everything passes through the center, she says, just like life. That's either profound or suspiciously efficient. She gathers her notes and places the hourglass into your hand. The sand continues flowing upward. Time behaves differently here, she explains. This is just for pacing, not deadlines. No one wants a rushed eternity. You nod and stand. Follow the lamps, she says gently. They know where you're going. As you step outside, the path ahead glows faintly. You begin to walk again, the hourglass tucked under your arm. And far off in the quiet distance, you think you hear the soft splash of a boat pushing off from shore. Another crossing, another coin, just like yours once was. You walk slowly now, guided once more by the patient flicker of the lamp-lit path. The hourglass in your hand hums softly, not like machinery or magic exactly, but more like a lullaby only time itself remembers. You glance down. The sand still flows upward, unrushed, like a promise that you're not late for anything anymore. The scenery begins to shift again. The walls fall away into open space, revealing a great plain stretching outward in every direction. It's not empty. Not quite. Low hills rise like breaths exhaled by the earth, and a gentle fog clings to the ground like it's trying not to be noticed. You realize that this is no longer the formalized, polished world of arrival clerks and corridors. This is Asphodel. You've read about it before. The ancient poets described it as the resting place of ordinary souls. Not heroes, not villains, just people. Farmers, potters, philosophers, barkeeps, dreamers. It's quiet, they said. Not sad, just neutral. Like a waiting room that forgot it was supposed to move on. And now you're walking through it. The fog parts gently around your ankles as you pass. And you notice that the terrain is covered in pale, silvery flowers. The asphodels themselves. Their petals sway without wind. Occasionally, you see one change color, like it's reacting to a nearby thought. Souls drift gently through the fields. Some sit beneath low trees and talk in soft voices. Others recline as though sunbathing, except there's no sun. Just the suggestion of light. You overhear part of a conversation between two souls debating whether figs were better in the early 5th century BCE or the late 4th. You smile. They don't notice you, but you get the sense they wouldn't mind if you joined them. Still, you keep walking. A low stone wall appears in the distance, curved like a crescent moon. As you approach, you see that it isn't a wall at all. It's an amphitheater. Not a grand one, like in Athens, but a modest, slightly crumbling circle of seats. A small performance is underway. You pause. At the center stands a single figure, declaiming lines from a tragedy, possibly Euripides, but it's being performed in the sleepy monotone of someone who knows no one is grading them. A few dozen souls lounge on the stone benches, listening politely. One is knitting. You step quietly past the performance and continue on. There's a strange comfort to this place. No one is in a hurry. No one is restless. These are people who lived lives with neither extreme triumph nor unforgivable sin. They paid their fare, crossed the river, and ended up here, where the afterlife doesn't judge so much as pause. Historians still argue whether the asphodel meadows were meant to be a punishment for mediocrity or a blessing for peaceful lives. Some say it was the fate of those who didn't strive enough. Others insist it's a reward, freedom from striving entirely. You look around. Here, nobody is proving anything. They just exist. Some play a soft game of knucklebones. One soul is painting with smoke on the air, her brush trailing hazy strokes that shimmer briefly, then fade. Another reads a scroll aloud to a group of attentive turtles. You don't ask why the turtles are here. You suspect they're honorary. You pass a small shrine. It's not to Hades or Persephone or even Hermes. It's a tribute to memory, mnemosyne. Someone has left offerings, dried flowers, pebbles with names carved into them, a fragment of pottery bearing what might be a poem. You feel your fingers brush the edge of something, your own memory, perhaps. But it slips away before you can hold it. You sit down for a moment on a stone bench beside the shrine. Your hourglass rests beside you, still flowing upward. You close your eyes and take in the quiet. It's not empty. It's full of the kind of stillness people rarely get in life. A voice beside you speaks. She forgets nothing, you know. You glance over. A figure in a wide-brimmed hat and long robes sits beside you, eyes half-lidded like someone permanently halfway through a nap. Mnemosyne, the figure continues. She keeps it all. Everything you thought you lost, every story, Every half-finished thought at 3 a.m. she remembers. It's all still in the current. You ask if that means the dead can get their memories back. The figure chuckles. Only if they ask the right questions. You nod. It sounds about right. You thank them and rise again. The path beckons. A few lamps shimmer gently along the edge of the field, lighting a new direction. You pick up your hourglass and continue walking. Eventually, you reach a gentle ridge, and from here you can see the true shape of Asphodel. Miles and miles of softly glowing fields, souls drifting in slow spirals, conversations half-finished, and dreams relived like lullabies. You wonder if you'll return here, but not yet. You still have a task, even if you don't quite know what it is. Not yet. But it's pulling you forward, and the lamps agree. You take a final look at the meadows, nod once to no one in particular, and continue on. Behind you, the whisper of a breeze carries a familiar sound, like someone saying your name just out of earshot. The glow from the asphodel meadows softens behind you as the path begins to narrow, twisting slightly like it's trying to avoid something. Your hourglass still hums in your hand, the sand within flowing steadily upward like it always knew where it was going. Even if you didn't, the lamps lining your path begin to shift in color, their glow warming to amber, then deepening into a dim orange that makes the shadows feel rounder, fuller. Ahead, you hear it before you see it. The faint, bubbling, burbling sound of running water, but not like the soft trickle of a brook. No, this sounds thicker, more syrupy, like someone turned a river into a mood. You're approaching Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. It's not what you expected. There's no eerie fog or dramatic chanting. In fact, the riverbank looks rather peaceful. A few souls sit on smooth stones, dipping their fingers into the water with the hesitant curiosity of someone considering a first date with amnesia. The river itself is translucent and blue, but it shifts constantly, rippling with flashes of color. Saffron, indigo, gold, like memories surfacing just long enough to be washed away again. You take a step closer, and the air changes. It smells calm. Not like flowers or incense, but like laundry dried in spring air, or the memory of an old bedroom from childhood. A comfortable nothingness. The scent of forgetting. To your right, a short marble column holds a bowl and a ladle, labeled simply, "Reincarnation service, sip if you're sure." A soul stands nearby, nervously wringing his hands. You overhear him mumble, "What if I forget how to juggle?" A nearby attendant shrugs. "Then you'll just become a very surprised juggler again." You smile. A small wooden sign sways in the breeze beside the river. Lethe, for those moving on, not for browsing. Apparently, even in the afterlife, people linger too long at the sample table. You sit down on a low stone bench and rest your hourglass beside you. The upward flowing sand reflects the light of Lethe in soft ribbons. Across the river, you see a group of souls lined up at a gentle archway marked Return Processing. Each one has a small glowing pebble in hand. Some look excited, some look tired. One looks like he just realized he was about to become a goat farmer in Thrace. Historians still argue whether Lethe is an act of mercy or erasure, says a voice to your left. You look over to see a soul with large round glasses and a scroll longer than he is tall. Some think it's a cleansing. Others think it's cruel, like a second death, removing what made you you. You nod. What do you think? He shrugs. Depends on the day. Today, I think forgetting makes room. But tomorrow, I might clutch my regrets like a toddler and insist they were masterpieces. Fair. You stay a little longer, watching the current glide by, your thoughts drifting to memories you haven't felt in years. The river whispers them back to you in fragments. Voices, places, songs. One is your first bicycle. Another is the smell of someone's cooking, though you can't recall whose. You don't drink, not yet. You still have something to deliver. That much feels true, even if you can't quite say what. A small creature, somewhere between a cat and a shadow, leaps from a nearby tree and pads silently to your side. It looks at you with eyes made of starlight, then turns to the river and dips its paw in, just for a moment. You expect something dramatic, but the little creature just sneezes, curls up beside you, and falls asleep. You envy it. Eventually, the lamps begin to pulse again. Not urgently, more like a polite tap on the shoulder. You gather your hourglass and rise. A final glance at Lethe reveals new souls arriving, old souls leaving, and some just sitting by the water, deciding. No rush here, no pressure, just the slow, infinite question. Are you ready to forget? You continue down the path. The light dims again, shifting toward a cool silver hue, and the stone beneath your feet feels a little more deliberate. No longer soft and mossy, but precise. Like you're entering a place where choices mattered, where things were weighed. Judgment is ahead. You can feel it, and as the fog thickens, the path narrows again into a corridor of softly glowing marble. You think about what you might remember, and what you might already have forgotten. You walk slowly but with purpose. Lethe behind you, judgment ahead. Still, the hourglass hums. Still, the sand climbs. The corridor narrows like a throat, swallowing you gently into the deeper folds of the underworld. Here, even the silence feels structured. You can almost hear it ticking, like a library, or a very polite court, or that one museum docent who always insists on walking 2 inches behind you, clearing their throat with grave disapproval. This is the precinct of judgment. The air is cooler, not cold exactly, but the kind of cool that makes you straighten your posture without realizing. Your hourglass continues to hum quietly in your palm, its upward flow of sand casting a faint golden light against the marble walls. It pulses once as you reach a doorway carved with a symbol you somehow recognize. Not from memory, but from something deeper. A knowing, maybe. You step inside. The chamber is vast. Not grand in a palatial way, but vast like a concept given architecture. The domed ceiling fades into darkness, but its shape presses down softly, like the curved shell of a thoughtful snail. 3 thrones sit before you in a crescent, one draped in deep red, one in green so dark it could be black, and one simply bare, polished to a high, unblinking shine. You wait. Eventually, movement. A figure appears in the center seat. The bare one. Neither man nor woman. Their robes shimmer like wet ink, and their face shifts every time you try to pin it down, like a memory that morphs in the retelling. This is one of the judges, possibly Minos, possibly Rhadamanthus, possibly Iacchus, or maybe they take turns, or are one being divided into 3 aspects. Historians still argue whether they were ever separate entities or simply personifications of collective justice. You don't ask. You're fairly sure it wouldn't help. The judge speaks. Courier, they say, their voice low but crisp, like parchment tearing slowly. You are not here for judgment, but you must still pass through it. A scroll unrolls beside them. It doesn't fall, it hovers, pulsing faintly. We review your life not to weigh it, the judge continues, but to orient your delivery. What you carried in life determines what you bring in death. You feel the weight of that more than you expect. The judge waves a hand, and the air fills with glimpses of your life, not as a timeline, but as a collage. A child's drawing, a lost shoe, a moment you made someone laugh so hard they cried, an apology you never gave, a joke you told that fell flat, the time you stayed in a storm to watch a single lightning bolt strike the sea. All of it floats there, mundane, sacred, strange, a life not remarkable in a historic sense, but textured, lived. You look up, half expecting the judge to begin some great reckoning, but they only tilt their head slightly. You carried memory, they say, not just your own. You blink, they continue. You gathered stories, retold them, changed them, made them softer for others. That is why you are a courier. You are not delivering a package. You are delivering a thread. You don't fully understand. Not yet. But it resonates. Somewhere in the folds of your now distant heartbeat. It resonates. Another movement. To the judge's left, the red-robed figure stirs. Their hands are clasped in their lap, elegant and still. Do you regret? They ask. Not accusing, but genuinely curious. You answer, sometimes. The figure nods. Good, that means you remember. To the right, the green, dark figure lifts their head, and you realize their eyes are shaped like spiral galaxies. Will you continue? They ask. I think I have to, you say. That is not what we asked, they reply. You're quiet for a long moment. Then softly, yes. The judge smiles, not in triumph, not in warning, just in understanding. The scroll rolls itself up, vanishing with a whisper. The hourglass in your hand pulses once, and then settles into silence, its glow dimming slightly. Pass, the center figure says. Not as a command, as a permission. You bow, not deeply, not theatrically. Just enough to say you were here and you heard them. As you turn to go, the chamber behind you shifts, disappearing into mist like a theater stage after the final act. And ahead, a new corridor opens, darker than the others but lined with a faint, shifting light, like stars filtered through memory. You walk on! No one escorts you now. The silence here isn't the kind that needs filling. It's the kind that holds space. As you move forward, you begin to feel something returning. Not noise, not memory. Purpose, and somewhere up ahead, beyond the horizon of this strange twilight, the task that waits for you is beginning to stir. You continue into the corridor of star-filtered light, and for the first time since your arrival in the underworld, the path beneath your feet feels alive. Not pulsing or writhing, nothing dramatic, but there's a quiet responsiveness to it, like walking on memory foam that remembers more than just your weight. Each footstep echoes back not with sound, but with suggestion. A scent you forgot. A name you once said in a whisper. A breeze that knew your shoulder blades by heart. This is the passage of echoes. You don't know how you know that, but you do. The corridor doesn't look particularly special. The walls are a mottled stone, etched with faint spirals, and the ceiling disappears into mist. But the air here is thicker. Not unpleasant, just meaningful. Like standing in the room where someone once told you a story that changed you. Ahead, the lamps resume, but they've changed again. They no longer look like flames or lanterns. They resemble floating seed pods of light, gently bobbing in the air like they're breathing very slowly. Occasionally, one drifts down to inspect you, hovers beside your shoulder, and then flutters back up with what might be approval or indifference. You're not sure which. You follow. And then, unexpectedly, you hear voices. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakably familiar. It's not conversation. Not yet. Just fragments. One says your name in a tone that makes your chest ache. Another hums a song you used to sing at work under your breath. Another says, quite clearly, don't forget the umbrella. And you feel the sudden memory of rain in your socks. You slow your pace, but the lights encourage you on with soft pulses. The corridor opens into a wider chamber. No grand threshold, no trumpets, just space. And in this space, shelves, hundreds, thousands of them, stretching into the ceiling, into the floor, beyond visible boundaries. Each shelf is filled with objects, mismatched, mundane, magnificent. A teacup, a dagger, a sock, a scroll, a feather, a toy chariot, a cracked mirror, a single glowing corn kernel. You stand still for a moment, because this feels like trespassing into someone's memory, possibly everyone's. A figure approaches, hooded, tall, holding a long stick with a feather at one end. They use it to dust the shelves gently. You expect them to ignore you, but they speak without looking up. This is the archive. Their voice is gentle. Tired, but not in a bitter way. More like someone who's finally accepted that the sorting will never end, and somehow finds that soothing. All stories pass through here, they say, before they fade or are carried on. You look closer. Some objects on the shelves have tags, simple clay markers. One says, "First smile, 6th century BCE. Another says, "Lost song from a flute, never recorded." Another just says, "Hope." You ask who organized it all. "No one," the archivist replies. "Or maybe everyone." They step aside, and you realize the shelves aren't just storage. They're guidance. A path winds between them, not in a straight line, but in a slow spiral. The kind that encourages wandering. You follow it. As you walk, you begin to see your own echoes. A handkerchief you lost in childhood. A birthday card you never mailed. A pair of gloves you thought you'd left on a bus. Here they are, in the archive. Preserved. Not because they were important to history, but because they mattered, once, to you. You pause in front of a small display. It contains a piece of paper with a doodle you made during a boring lecture. A smooth stone from a beach vacation you forgot the name of. And the faint sound of someone you once loved saying your name like it was a secret. You don't cry. That's not what this place is for. You just breathe. The archivist reappears, handing you a tiny slip of paper. It reads, "Courier path, retrieval in progress. Proceed." You nod and keep walking. You pass a section labeled Speculative Memories. Souls wander there, touching objects they're not sure ever belonged to them. One pokes at a lyre and says, "I always wanted to learn." The lyre hums softly in reply. Another soul cradles an unmarked mask and asks, "Was I ever someone else?" The mask does not answer. You keep going. Eventually, you reach a small door at the end of the shelves. It's simple, carved from olive wood, with a knocker shaped like a cicada. You hesitate, then knock once. The door swings open on its own. Beyond it, a bridge of translucent stone arching over a soft black void filled with shimmering stars. Not sky, not water, just potential. You step onto the bridge, the hourglass still in hand. Each footstep here makes a low chime, like someone plucking a string far below. You don't know where the bridge leads, but you know this. You're not just delivering a message. You're part of the message, and it's almost time to be heard. The bridge curves gently under your feet, suspended in a space that feels neither above nor below the world you came from. Beneath it, that star-dappled void stretches in every direction, glowing not with the brilliance of distant suns, but with the quiet warmth of remembered moments. These aren't celestial bodies. They're glimmers of thought. You suspect, perhaps, that every shining speck is a memory someone forgot, and the universe kept safe out of sheer sentimentality. Each step you take on the translucent stone sounds a low note, sometimes a chord, sometimes a single, plucked thread of tone. No two are alike, but none are jarring. You realize the bridge is playing you, or maybe the you that existed in fragments. The laughs, the mistakes, the time you tried to bake something ambitious and forgot the sugar, all gently set to music and offered back with love. The hourglass still glows in your palm, though the upward flowing sand has slowed. Not stopped, just meandering. Like it knows the bridge isn't a place for rushing. At the crest of the arc, the air changes. Not colder, just thinner, like you're passing through a layer of understanding, or a very fancy mist. You pause at the center of the bridge and turn, and for the first time, you can see the path behind you clearly. The field of asphodel stretches like a pale dream. The echo corridor glimmers like a soft thought half recalled. And the great rivers you passed, Lethe, Styx, trace their slow loops far below, threading the underworld together like a tapestry sewn by eternity's least punctual seamstress. You wonder how many others have walked this bridge. Thousands? Millions? A few awkward interns lost on their first assignment? Historians still argue whether the bridge between memory and delivery was ever part of the original mythos. Some call it a later invention, an allegorical flourish. Others insist it predates even the oldest temples, born not from belief, but necessity. After all, even the dead must pass something on. A shape forms ahead. Not a building, not quite a person. Something in between. It solidifies as you approach. A sort of postal kiosk. Yes, that's really the only way to describe it. Ancient marble fused with something faintly bureaucratic, featuring a counter, a glowing tray, and a sign hanging loosely overhead that reads, "Message transfer station. Couriers only. Please don't lick anything." You don't intend to, but now that they've said it, you feel oddly tempted. Behind the counter sits a figure in a crisp chiton and a pair of truly stunning sandals. Wings sprout lazily from the sides of their ankles, as though they once moved quickly, but have since adopted a far more comfortable retirement pace. Their curls are tidy. Their smirk is immediate. "Hermes," you say, not really sure why. He winks. In one of my more casual forms, yes. "Welcome. You're almost at your delivery point. Let's do a little pre-check, shall we?" You nod, because what else are you going to do in the presence of a deity/messenger/customer service rep? He pulls out a long scroll and taps it against his palm. It promptly rolls open on its own, slapping lightly against the marble counter. "Right. Let's see. You've crossed with proper fare. Didn't try to bribe Charon with a song. Didn't dive into Lethe for recreational forgetting. Passed through Asphodel without stealing any flowers. Well done. That's harder than it sounds. And..." He squints at the scroll. "Looks like you passed judgment with, let's call it, mild philosophical existentialism, which is a perfectly acceptable answer." You ask him what exactly you're supposed to deliver. Hermes gestures at the tray. Inside it, slowly forming, is an object made entirely of light and gentle sound. It looks like a scroll, but it's humming faintly, like it's remembering being read. You lean closer and realize it's made of fragments. Some you recognize. A bedtime story your grandmother told. A joke a stranger once told you on a train. A poem you wrote and never shared. A lullaby in a language you don't speak. A dream about standing in the rain, waiting for someone who never arrived. And the moment you realized that was okay. "You're delivering this?" Hermes says gently. "Not to a person. To the next place. To the next part." You reach out and touch the scroll. It warms to your fingers like old sunlight. "This," Hermes continues, "is the echo thread. It's woven from everything you held close but never finished. It's what remains when nothing else does. Your job is to send it forward." "To who?" "To whoever needs it next." You blink and he shrugs. "Memory is a current, not a container. You send it on, and eventually someone picks up a fragment. Maybe in a dream. Maybe in a moment of déjà vu. Maybe while watching rain slide down a window and wondering why they suddenly feel calm." He gestures at the tray again. "You're not preserving the past," he says. "You're composting it, making it bloom again." You smile because somehow that feels exactly right. You place the scroll of light into the tray. The tray closes. There is no grand flash, no explosion, just a soft exhale, like someone finishing a sentence. Hermes nods. "Good delivery," he says. "You're free to wander now." You turn to leave the kiosk, and though you take nothing with you, you feel lighter than you felt in lifetimes. The bridge behind you lingers like a chord unresolved, a final note humming gently in your memory. You glance back once, just once, and see Hermes already lounging back in his marble chair, flipping through what appears to be a catalog titled "Top 10 Mortals Who Forgot to Tip Charon." You smile. The moment you turn forward again, the space around you changes. Gone are the glowing shelves, the looping rivers, the whispering fog. Now you walk through a landscape that doesn't quite obey geography. Paths rise and fall without incline. Trees appear without roots, their leaves made of folded paper prayers. There's no wind, but some branches sway anyway, as if stretching after a long nap. It's quiet again, but a fuller quiet, like a theater just before the curtain lifts, or the stillness between thoughts. This is the realm of transitions. You walk on, your hourglass still rests in your palm, though now its contents glow faintly with the hue of the scroll you delivered. The sand no longer rises. It floats, paused, as though waiting for a new rhythm. Here, everything feels optional. Not unimportant, just unhurried. You pass a soul seated on a large tortoise. They're playing an ancient board game with themselves and cheating on both sides. The tortoise gives you a knowing glance. You nod in return. Nearby, a fountain pours upward, its water flowing in slow, lazy spirals before vanishing into the air like it was never liquid to begin with. A childlike soul sits beside it, blowing bubbles that contain full constellations. Each one bursts with a tiny sigh. You feel your steps slowing, not from weariness, but from wonder. This place isn't part of any myth you remember, at least not directly. No Homeric verse, no Orphic hymn. It's a whisper space, a maybe land. One of those between realms ancient storytellers avoided describing too much, lest they ruin the mystery. Historians still argue whether this place was ever part of the official cosmology, says a voice beside you. You don't startle. Of course there's someone walking beside you now. It's a woman in a robe made entirely of postcards. Her hair shimmers with postage stamps, and each time she speaks, her voice seems to echo with forgotten conversations. They called it Lyman once, she says. The threshold. But others say it's just the moment between sentences. Either way, everyone passes through. Most don't remember. You ask if you're supposed to do something here. She considers. You could rest. You could ask a question. You could wander until something strange feels familiar. It's a buffet of maybe. Helpful. You decide to keep walking. As you do, the terrain shifts subtly underfoot. Now soft grass, now the crunch of tiny bones, now something that feels exactly like the rug in your childhood home. You look down. It is the rug from your childhood home. You step around the weird stain that never quite came out. You pass a river that hums, but unlike Lethe, it doesn't erase, it harmonizes. As you walk by, it begins to hum your tune, the one that's been floating just behind your thoughts since you arrived. You hum back. The river approves. In the distance you see 3 doors. Not imposing, not dramatic, just present. The first is made of mirror glass, constantly shifting to reflect your current face, and every other face you've ever worn in dreams. The second is made of driftwood and old letters, held together with binding twine and good intentions. You can almost hear it sigh with nostalgia. The third is simple stone, carved with a spiral. You don't know why, but this one feels like it's watching you back. You approach them slowly, and the moment you reach them, they all disappear. In their place, a hallway opens, lined with windows. You step in, each window looks out on a memory. Not just yours, everyone's. You watch a woman in 15th century Mali teach her daughter how to grind grain while humming an ancient lullaby. You see a Roman courier sprinting down a dirt road with a satchel full of love letters. You catch a glimpse of a pair of Viking siblings making fun of each other over burnt fish. You see a Sumerian father telling a bedtime story about a goat who learned to fly by accident. Each pane holds a scene, some fleeting, some vivid. None of them extraordinary on their own, but each one mattered to someone. You feel a gentle tug in your chest. You look at your hourglass. It's glowing steadily now. No movement, no hum, just presence. Something is waiting. You walk until the hallway ends. Not with a bang, not with a flourish. Just a simple, open arch. And beyond it, a forest. Not mythical, not otherworldly. Just a forest. With birdsong and light. And the promise that whatever comes next will be quiet and slow and real. You take a breath and step forward. The forest is surprisingly ordinary. You half expected glowing vines or mythological beasts sweeping dramatically through moonbeams. But no, just the familiar hush of trees being trees. Oaks, maybe. Some kind of pine. Something vaguely figgy in the distance. The air smells like earth and memory, with a hint of something sweet you can't place. Like honey left near a window in late spring. You walk slowly. The forest floor is soft beneath your feet. A mix of moss, pine needles, and the occasional forgotten sock. You pass a squirrel holding a scroll. It glares at you, clearly mid-chapter. You nod respectfully and keep walking. This is the resting wood. You don't recall ever hearing about it in myths. Then again, maybe it didn't make the cut for the grand narratives. Heroes always needed climaxes and monsters, not naps and picnics. But here, among the branches and lazy beams of sunlight, is something else. Permission. Permission to be still, to let things land. You follow a winding trail that doesn't lead so much as suggest. It curves like a good idea, dipping near a burbling creek that seems to hum faintly in tune with your heartbeat. You pause there. The water is clear and slow, reflecting not your face, but flashes of who you've been. One glimpse shows you trying to build a kite from instructions written in ancient Greek. Another shows you hugging someone goodbye, only to realize you never quite let go. The creek doesn't judge. It just offers reflection. You wander on, deeper into the forest, until you come across a peculiar sight. A circle of stones, each one bearing a different object. A spoon, a pebble, a thimble, a broken toy boat, a pressed flower. You sit beside the circle, curious. A small plaque reads, "Offerings to things that almost happened." You reach into your pocket, somehow it still exists, and pull out a movie ticket stub. You're not sure from what year or what film, but you remember being excited. And then, not going. You place it in the circle. The forest seems to exhale. The hourglass in your hand warms slightly, as if in thanks. Historians still argue whether this part of the underworld existed in formal doctrine, or emerged from collective longing. You recall reading once, or dreaming. A realm not of punishment or reward, but gentle resolution. You're starting to believe it's the latter. As you rise and move on, the forest opens up slightly into a grove filled with hammocks. Yes, hammocks, strung between trees of all types. Olive, cypress, one suspiciously like a coat rack. Each hammock is occupied by a resting soul. Some nap, some read. One plays an ocarina. Another is having a very animated conversation with a pine cone. A quiet path winds through them. You follow it, careful not to disturb. The further you walk, the more the hammocks thin out, until it's just you again. Alone with your breath, and the occasional leaf daring to fall dramatically before realizing no one is watching. You begin to hear something. Not music, not quite. A cadence, a rhythm. Almost like someone chanting from far away, but softly, and with no words. It makes your shoulders drop. Your pace slows. You breathe more deeply, like your lungs finally believe they're allowed to. You realize something strange. You don't feel lost, not even a little. Up ahead, you see a clearing. At the center, a table, just a wooden table, simple and wide, with mismatched chairs tucked haphazardly around it. The surface is cluttered with teacups, storybooks, dice, feather quills, loose coins, playing cards, and folded paper cranes. It looks like the leftovers of a very unusual committee meeting. You sit down. The seat fits you perfectly. Of course it does. A teacup nudges itself toward you. You sip. The tea tastes like the word familiar wrapped in a hug. This, you realize, is the moment between the breath after delivery before return. Not everyone gets one, but you have. A pause, a forest, a teacup, a seat at a table where no one rushes you to speak. You rest your hourglass on the table. Its glow has dimmed now, not faded, just settled. It's part of the space around you, no longer a countdown, but a companion. You lean back, close your eyes, and listen to the forest breathing. The job is not over, but it is for now still. You stay at the table longer than you meant to. Not because time drags, but because it flows differently here. Like honey, or poetry, or Sunday afternoons. The kind of time that asks nothing of you except to notice it passing. The teacup, now empty, quietly refills itself. This time it tastes like a warm memory of laughter in a kitchen. You don't remember whose kitchen, but the sound of chopping, of clinking cups, of casual joy. That part is clear. You don't rush. Eventually, you rise from the chair, not out of urgency, but because your feet feel ready. You place the hourglass gently in your satchel. Yes, you have a satchel now, and you're not sure when that happened, but it's very comfortable and makes you feel vaguely important, like someone who carries meaningful things on purpose. You leave the clearing by a path so subtle it almost doesn't exist. Moss covers most of it, and in some stretches you're guided more by feeling than sight. A breeze trails beside you, not quite wind, more like a suggestion. You follow it. Before long, you reach a grove unlike the rest of the forest. The trees here are evenly spaced, their trunks pale and smooth. Beneath them grows a carpet of blue flowers, something between violets and stars. They glow faintly in the dusk. At the center of the grove stands a figure. Their back is to you. They wear a cloak that shifts like moonlight on water. You clear your throat gently. The figure turns. You see yourself, not precisely. This version of you is taller, or maybe just straighter. Their face is yours, but softened by something you haven't felt in a long while. Maybe acceptance, maybe sleep. Their eyes meet yours, and they smile, a little crooked, a little tired, but real. You're early, they say. You blink, or maybe I'm late, they add with a shrug. Hard to say. You step closer. They don't move. They just wait. I'm the you who finishes the journey, they explain. You're the one still walking it. That sounds like something a metaphor would say. But in this place you've learned not to argue with metaphors. They have better comebacks. Why are you here? You ask. They gesture around the grove. This is the place where messengers meet themselves, before they go back. You've delivered the echo thread. You've rested. Now comes the return. You frown. Return to what? They give a little laugh. Gentle, not mocking. To whatever comes next. Sometimes that's another life. Sometimes it's someone else's dream. Sometimes it's a story whispered during a thunderstorm. They step closer. You don't get to choose what you return as, but you always carry something back. You touch the hourglass in your satchel. It pulses gently in response. What happens if I don't want to go back? You ask. They smile again. Then you can stay. But eventually, even stillness begins to echo. And you'll find yourself called forward again. That's the nature of the thread. You're part of it now. Part of the passing. You stand there for a long time, not speaking, just sharing space. Two versions of yourself, in a grove of blue glowing flowers, surrounded by trees that hold their breath with ancient grace. Finally, your other self steps back, raises a hand in a lazy sort of wave, and fades like mist into the leaves. You're alone again, but not lonely. Ahead, a door appears. It's made of nothing you recognize. Just possibility, shaped like a choice. You walk to it. Your hand rests on the handle. The moment stretches, not with tension, but with meaning. Like the pause between question and answer. Like the hush before someone tells the truth. You turn the handle. The door opens. And you step through. The door closes soundlessly behind you. And the world shifts, not suddenly, not jarringly, just like a page being turned. One you weren't finished reading, perhaps, but you trust that the next has its own strange poetry. The space you enter feels different. Not the afterlife, not quite the mortal world either. It's the hinge between, the interstitial hush. The in-between, you stand on what looks like a shoreline at twilight, though no ocean lies before you. Just a great reflective plain stretching out in every direction, mirroring the sky. The surface isn't water, but memory made liquid. Fluid recollection, shimmering with the color of long-lost moments. You test it with your foot, no splash. Just a ripple, soft as a sigh. The reflection shifts briefly to show your childhood bedroom. Then a hallway from your first job. Then someone laughing while slicing mangoes in a kitchen you barely remember. You blink, and the images drift away. You begin walking. Each step leaves no mark, no echo, no consequence. But the air changes around you, gently perfumed with faint nostalgia. Old books, cinnamon tea, the dusty warmth of sun through closed windows. Somewhere, a wind chime rings, though no wind stirs. A figure approaches. This time it's not yourself, nor a god. Just a person. Tall, slightly hunched, wrapped in a cloak stitched from handwritten letters. They walk with the quiet authority of someone who has been everywhere twice and has no desire to go again unless the tea is better. They stop beside you and tilt their head. "Courier," they say. "You're almost through." You nod. It's not a question you need answered. They hold out a hand. You instinctively reach into your satchel, offering the hourglass, but they shake their head gently. No, that part is finished. You glance down at the satchel. The hourglass is gone. In its place, nestled among folds of linen and forgotten thoughts, is a coin, small, round, unassuming. Familiar. You lift it to the light and see the faint outline of Charon's boat. The coin is not currency anymore. It's symbol, seal, ticket. You've earned a choice, the cloaked figure says. Few get one. But you've walked the long way. You've carried not just a message, but its echoes. They gesture outward toward the mirrored plane. Now you may decide, return to the thread and be woven anew, born, dreamed, or remembered, or remain in the reflection where stories go to rest. You hesitate. Will I remember this? You ask. They smile, almost sadly. No, but something will. The thought doesn't frighten you. In fact, it's comforting, because by now you understand. This was never about remembering. It was about carrying. You glance out across the plain. In the distance, far off, a ripple shifts and shows a child's drawing of a boat, crooked and smiling. Then a grandmother humming as she buttons a sweater. Then a figure like you, walking slowly, gently, across a bridge made of stars. You turn to the figure. "I'll return," you say. Their nod is deep, grateful even. They extend their hand again, this time to guide, not to take. You walk together, side by side, across the mirrored plain. There's no portal, no lightning, just a shimmer in the air like breath against glass. You pass through it effortlessly, and suddenly, you are somewhere new. You blink. A child is sitting on a floor, cradling a book. Not reading, just holding it. You are the idea in their mind. A story about to begin. A flicker of curiosity. The very first sentence unspooling, carried on the breath of a sleeping world. You are no longer walking. You are being dreamed, and you are ready. You are being dreamed. At first, it's a strange sensation. like floating just beneath the surface of a thought, not quite awake, not fully formed. You are an idea caught in the middle of becoming. The edges of you are fuzzy, like the moment before a sneeze or the pause before you remember a word you've forgotten all day. Then, slowly, the dream takes shape. You are in a room, not a grand hall or mythical cavern, just a small, ordinary room with faded wallpaper and a bookshelf missing one of its legs. Light pours in through a crooked window. You hear bird song, the kind that sounds familiar, even if you've never heard it before. Across the room, a child is sleeping, not deeply, but in that gentle pre-dawn doze, where the world is pliable and dreams spill into the real with ease. A stuffed animal lies tucked under their arm. You drift closer. The room smells like warm laundry and pencil shavings. You're not visible, not physical. You are the thought forming just beyond the veil of sleep, the whisper of something half-remembered. A myth, maybe. A boatman on a dark river. A coin pressed into a palm. You are the idea of Charon, but gentler. Less death, more delivery. And in this dream, you watch the child dream of crossing a river. Not out of fear, but with purpose. They walk across stones shaped like memories, past trees that whisper names they've yet to learn. The dream builds on what you carried. The scroll, the hourglass, the bridge. Somehow you've become the architecture of the dream. A corridor of stars, a grove of soft blue light, a strange postal counter, and a smirking god in winged sandals. It's all here, distorted, sure, and rearranged. The tortoise now sings jazz. The archive is now a treehouse, but it's recognizable and meaningful. You realize this child has never studied Greek myth. They don't know Charon or the Obel or the rivers of the underworld, but somehow they've inherited it. Through story, through whisper, through you. This is what the echo thread becomes. Not memory, not data. Impression, emotion, a tone, a story someone didn't know they were waiting for. Historians still argue whether the concept of reincarnation in ancient myth was meant literally or symbolically. You recall hearing once. Whether the soul returned as itself, or simply left behind echoes to be caught by the next wind. Maybe this is the answer. You are that wind. You settle into the dream like a familiar jacket. The child walks through their nighttime world, guided by your presence, not seen, but sensed. When they reach the riverbank, they turn back, wave to someone unseen, and walk forward with calm certainty. They cross, and just as their foot touches the far shore, they stir in their bed. Eyes flutter open. The room returns, but they carry something new. Not knowledge, just a feeling. That journeys can be gentle. That endings aren't always goodbyes. That coins are sometimes stories waiting to be spent. They blink at the ceiling, smile at nothing, and stretch like a cat in spring. Outside, the birds shift into a new tune. A softer one. And you move on, because another dream is beginning. This one smells like tea and cinnamon. Now you drift again, not as a person or a voice, but as suggestion, a murmur between layers of sleep. You pass from one dream to the next, like a letter sliding between hands. Never fully seen, always somehow understood. This new dream begins not in a forest or a boat, but in a hallway, long, familiar, the kind you might find in a school or a very polite government office. The lights overhead hum softly, casting a glow that feels like early afternoon after lunch, and just before anything important happens. A dreamer walks the hallway. Someone older this time. Their hair is streaked with years, their shoulders hunched not from fear, but from a lifetime of carrying too much at once. They don't notice you, not directly, but their pace slows the moment you arrive. As if they suddenly remembered they didn't have to hurry. The hallway twists a little. Walls shift, doors appear. Each door has a name on it. Not names like Tom or Susan, But labels like, "That time you almost moved to Italy, what if you'd said yes to that dance?" The poem you never showed anyone. The dreamer pauses at the third one. Their hand hovers, but they don't open it. Instead, they move on. You follow gently, like a warm breeze curling around ankles. The hallway curves downward now, narrowing slightly. Paintings hang on the walls, none finished, all lovely in their incompleteness. One shows a train station in fog. Another, a single boot in fresh snow. Another is just a color, the exact shade of a Sunday morning when nothing is wrong. Historians still argue whether dreams serve as psychological maintenance or spiritual translation. You murmur inwardly, echoing someone's long-forgotten thesis. Whether they're debris or maps, trash or treasure, in this moment the answer is clear. They're both. You reach a chamber at the end of the hallway. It's round, carpeted, cozy in a way that libraries dream of being. No sharp corners, no announcements, just a single desk in the middle, and on it a pile of unsent letters. The dreamer approaches. They pick up one letter. Their eyes don't widen, they don't weep. They just read and breathe, and after a moment, smile, because the letter is from themselves, not their current self, not their younger self, but a self that still believes in beginning again. You, of course, are the delivery mechanism. Not the message, not the writer, just the breath that carried it forward. The dream fades with the soft sigh of someone letting go of something they didn't know they were holding. The hallway vanishes. The desk dissolves. The unsent letters scatter upward like dry leaves caught in a memory, and you are carried onward again, this time into a kitchen. It smells of cardamom and warm butter. Someone stands by the stove, stirring something in a heavy pot. They hum off-key. On the table sits a collection of old journals, some leather-bound, some held together by sheer hope and disintegrating tape. A cat naps in a basket nearby, completely unimpressed by the mythic transmission happening across the room. You float near the journals. One opens. Not dramatically, just enough. A line is written inside in handwriting that looks like someone learning how to believe in themselves again. It reads, "Even ferry boats need rest." The person at the stove glances toward the open book. They smile. They don't know where the line came from, but somehow it's just what they needed. And you? You drift again. A little quieter now, a little softer, but always forward. You are quieter now, not diminished, just more at ease in your non-shape, the way a well-worn blanket molds to the contours of a sleepy lap. The current of dreams continues to carry you, not as a traveler exactly, but as a rhythm, a pulse, like background music no one notices until it stops. This time you pass through the dream of someone on a train. The view outside the window is hazy, indistinct. Trees dissolve into cliffs, which dissolve into waves, which dissolve into nothing at all. The dreamer sits still, not reading, not looking at their phone, not trying to make sense of the destination. Just sitting, watching. Their fingers tap idly on the windowsill. To a beat they don't remember learning. You drift beside them. In the reflection on the glass, they don't see themselves. They see a boat, a ferry, rowing steadily through still waters under a sky that isn't day or night. On the boat, a single figure, cloaked, silent, waiting. Not in a threatening way, just expectant. The dreamer frowns slightly, not in fear, just curiosity. Why the boat? They wonder aloud. And because you are there, you answer, not in words, in feeling, because the boat is not about crossing. It's about pausing, marking the moment, the transition between what was and what might be. And suddenly the dreamer understands, not consciously, not in a way they'll remember after waking up with an imprint of their pillow on their cheek and one sock missing, but in their bones, in the hum that stays with them through their commute and their next cup of coffee. You pass through the train window, out into the wider dreamscape. It's becoming more familiar to you now. The way a long hallway becomes easier to navigate once you've counted the squeaky floorboards. There's a rhythm to it all. Souls dreaming, remembering, forgetting, waking. And your presence nudges the current along. You drift toward a new dream. This one feels ancient and rural. You float down into a small hut, low-ceilinged and round, with smoke curling up through a central hole. The walls are hung with bundles of dried herbs and animal skins. A low fire glows in the hearth, casting flickering light onto the face of a sleeping woman curled in furs. She is dreaming of the underworld, but not the Greek one. Her version is colder. It smells of iron and lichen and the blood of wild roots. Her ferryman rides not a skiff, but a great elk with empty eyes. Her river is made of ice, cracking softly under each step. And yet, even here the echo thread has found her. The coin glimmers briefly in her palm. Her boat is not made of wood. It is made of stories, woven reeds, hollow bones, whispered names. She steps inside, and in that instant you realize Charon is not a person. Charon is a shape, a need, a story told by many tongues in many ways to answer the same aching question. What comes next? And the answer is always the same. A journey, a guide, and a price so small it can fit beneath your tongue. The woman's dream softens as she crosses her river. No fear, no hurry, just motion. You rise again, gently as mist, leaving her dream as it quiets, trailing off into the hush of early morning. You pause. The dreamscape before you shifts, not into a place, but into music. An old lullaby hummed in countless languages, mothers to children, lovers to each other, strangers to the night. It loops and carries you onward, not toward a destination, but toward a purpose. The lullaby hums all around you now, wordless, soft, as though sung by the night itself. You don't know the tune, but your essence seems to recognize it, like the scent of something from childhood or the rhythm of footsteps echoing in a hallway you haven't walked in years. The dream you drift into next is curious, not heavy, not sad, just mildly puzzled. An older man stands in a library, not a grand, marbled one. This is a personal space, clearly. A lifetime of mismatched shelves packed with paperbacks and notes scribbled in the margins. The kind of library where the books know when to whisper and when to sigh. He's looking for something, not frantically, just with the energy of someone who knows something is out of place and has all the time in the world to find it. You hover gently. He pulls down a volume bound in worn cloth, blows a bit of dust from the cover, opens it, and there it is. Not a word, not a paragraph, just a small pressed coin nestled between the pages. Your coin, Charon's coin, except not quite, because this one doesn't gleam. It glows with a soft, papery light, as though it's been read more than it's been spent. The man turns it over slowly in his hands. His eyes widen, not in fear, but recognition. He doesn't speak, he just smiles. He remembers a story someone told him once. Maybe a teacher, maybe a grandparent, maybe a tour guide in a museum he barely remembers visiting. Something about boats and rivers and the ferryman who always waited. He places the coin in a small wooden bowl near his desk and returns the book to the shelf. That night, he'll sleep a little deeper than usual, and somewhere in his dreams, he'll cross a bridge made of folded receipts and handwritten recipes. And he'll meet Charon, who looks suspiciously like his neighbor who always returns borrowed tools, but younger, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. With a grin, the two will sit for a while, share soup, say nothing, and when he wakes up, he won't remember the dream, but he'll feel lighter. You drift from the library, coasting along the pulse of that ever-present lullaby. Next, you find yourself in a place between places. It isn't a dream so much as a pause, like the held breath between thoughts. There is a staircase here, suspended in nothing, spiraling gently upward and downward at the same time. It feels impossible, but also perfectly normal. You descend, slowly. Each step pulses underfoot, and with each pulse, a moment flashes. A baby being named. A coin placed in a bowl beside a hospital bed. Someone lighting a candle while whispering a story in a language only their grandmother knew. These aren't dreams. These are rituals. Moments where the veil thins just enough for myth to become muscle memory. Where belief doesn't need to be logical. It just needs to be comforting. Historians still argue whether the practice of placing coins with the dead originated solely in Greek tradition. You murmur softly in the voice you don't quite have anymore. Or whether it emerged in different cultures simultaneously, each asking the same ancient question in their own local dialect. What if that's the answer? Not one origin, but many. Because death is global, and fear is human. And across centuries and continents, we kept inventing the same solution over and over. Give them something for the journey. And so you keep moving. Down the stairs, through the pause, into another dream. This one is quiet. Not even a whisper, just stillness. A person sits on a train bench at dusk. No movement, no station in sight. Just them and the hush. You pass by and drop the coin. They don't notice, but their hand closes over it in their sleep, and their breath deepens. This time, you float into a dream that isn't a place, or a person, or even a story. Not yet, anyway. It's the barest flicker of an idea forming behind someone's eyes, right before they doze off with the TV still playing softly in the background. Just the murmur of voices, the glow of distant stars on a screensaver, and the mind loosening its grip on the world. You're here to help, not with a grand message or dramatic vision, but with a nudge. A breath of myth, soft and unassuming, like the rustle of pages turning themselves. A boat slides into view, gently carving a path across a sea made of shadows and half-finished thoughts. There's no one aboard, not yet, but the outline of the story is taking shape. The prow curls like a question mark. The oars dip without sound. Overhead, a sky full of watchful eyes blinks slowly in rhythm with your passage. You aren't guiding the boat. You are the boat. Or maybe the wake it leaves behind. The dreamer, someone young, someone thoughtful, drifts near the water's edge. They're not afraid, just curious. Their dream self toes the edge of the shore, watching the ripple pattern you leave behind. They don't recognize it yet, but something about it feels familiar, like a bedtime story they never quite finished. They reach into their dream pocket and pull out, of all things, a subway token. You smile, or you would if you had a face. It's always something different, isn't it? An obol, a copper penny, a seashell, a digital blip, a piece of lint shaped like a question. Across time and space, cultures and sleep cycles, humanity always invents tokens for passage. Historians still argue whether Charon demanded payment as a literal tax or a symbolic gesture, you recall, not from a book, but from the vague flavor of having once understood. But either way, it stuck. The token glints in their palm. The dream shifts. Now they're seated in a classroom. Not a real one, more like a composite of every classroom they've ever sat in. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, and a blackboard stretches longer than it should. At the front of the room, a teacher is drawing something in chalk. A circle, a river, a boat. The child raises their hand. "Yes?" says the teacher, who looks suspiciously like their aunt, their favorite cartoon character, and also themselves wearing glasses. "What's on the other side?" they ask. The teacher pauses, smiles, and erases the board. Because that's the whole point, isn't it? No one really knows. We imagine it anyway. We fill in the gaps. With ferrymen and gates, coins and songs, winged sandals and deep blue shadows. We spin the thread. Not because we're sure, but because it comforts us to believe there's someone waiting. Even if we don't know their name, you continue drifting through the dream as it reshapes itself again. This time the child is on a playground. the kind that appears in 1,000 dreams. Old wooden swings, sand that goes on forever, a tire swing turning lazily on its own. They dig in the sandbox and they find something. A small coin, a bit of metal that glows faintly with the dream light. They don't ask what it is, they just pocket it instinctively, because they already know. You spiral upward, higher now, the dreamscape stretching beneath you like an ever-turning map. Cities flicker by. Tiny moments sparkle in windows. Someone lighting a candle, someone setting down a glass of water beside a photo, someone whispering, just in case, before bed. You have become part of all of them. Not loud, not visible, just present. The river flows beneath you now. Broad, slow, eternal. And on it, ferries glide silently in both directions. Some full, some empty. Some with only the oars and the memory of a story still being told. You realize something else now as you drift. Charon isn't just a myth. He's a verb. To Charon is to carry, to accompany, to witness someone from here to there, even if there is a question with no fixed answer. And you? You are Charoning now, quietly, faithfully. The river stretches ahead of you now, vast and gleaming beneath a sky that doesn't bother choosing day or night. Its surface is smooth, not glassy, not frozen, but something in between, like a polished memory. The ferries continue to pass in steady rhythm, each one carving its gentle wake into the current. You drift over them like a hush, watching as passengers step on, sit quietly, and vanish just before they reach the far shore. You don't need to follow each one. You understand now. The journey matters less than the gesture. And the gesture is always this: someone waiting, someone ferrying, and someone placing something small, so small, into the palm of a departing hand. A coin, a seed, a whisper, a hope. In the next dream you visit, it's raining. The kind of dream rain that doesn't drench, but simply wraps everything in soft percussion. Cobblestone streets stretch beneath dim lanterns. You follow the sound of footsteps. They belong to a woman with a paper umbrella and shoes that click as if narrating her story. She doesn't see you, but she turns down a narrow alley you hadn't noticed before. Her pace slows. Her breath fogs in the cool air. At the end of the alley, a small table waits, wooden, unremarkable. A man sits behind it, smiling with a tired kind of patience. His coat is threadbare, his hands are ancient. "Charon?" she asks, not startled, just curious. He chuckles. "Some nights." She places something on the table. Not a coin, not money, a folded photograph. It shows her and someone else, caught mid-laugh. Their heads are tilted together like the moon leaning toward the earth. Charon slides the photograph beneath the table. "Paid in full," he murmurs, and gestures toward a doorway that wasn't there a second ago. The woman nods, steps through, and the dream ends. You remain, still gliding. Historians still argue whether Charon evolved as a warning or a comfort. You muse silently, the thought blooming like a lily in a still pond. Whether his coin was meant to frighten the living or to honor the dead, you don't need to choose. He can be both. He often is. You rise above the city, the rain lessening until it becomes memory, then mist, then nothing at all. Next you're in a cave, lit not by torches, but by softly glowing mushrooms and strands of dream light. Someone is asleep in a hammock strung between two carved pillars. They are ancient, or they are a child. It's hard to tell in dreams. They're whispering in their sleep, a name over and over. Not yours, not Charon's, just a name they miss, a name they wish they had said more. You leave something at the foot of their hammock, a silver bead no bigger than a raindrop. It will melt by morning, vanish like dew, but in the dream, they reach for it. Hold it close, smile. The ferry you're riding now has no oars. It moves by memory alone. The current carries you past dream islands where gods have retired to play cards, where forgotten myths rehearse their lines, where symbols grow old and molt into new meaning. On one of the islands, you see someone painting, a huge canvas, blank and waiting. They dip their brush in ink and write a single word. Maybe. It floats there, pulsing like a heartbeat. You drift past, heart slow, thought steady. Somewhere, someone wakes up and forgets their dream. But not completely. They stare at the ceiling for a while. The shape of the fairy lingers behind their eyelids. They don't know why they feel comforted. They just do. You keep drifting. The coin is still in your pouch. You never used it. But maybe it was never meant for you. Maybe you're the one who delivers it again and again, into the right hands, at the right time. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe that's the fair. The sky above you shifts, again, not with storm or sunrise, but with tone. The dreamscape dims slightly, not into darkness, but into the soft charcoal of dusk remembered through sheer curtains. Everything feels quieter here, like a theater after the final bow. The kind of hush that wraps around you when a story is almost over. You drift toward a familiar silhouette. A boat. Charon's boat, but tonight no one boards it. It's moored at a quiet dock, bobbing ever so slightly. A lantern hangs from the prow, casting a cone of light that doesn't quite reach the water. The boatman himself isn't here. Not yet. Or maybe he's resting, feet up somewhere with a crossword puzzle and a lukewarm mug of something bitter. It's peaceful. For the first time, you notice the wood grain on the oars. Deep grooves worn into the handle from centuries of grip. Someone once carved a name there, half visible, half worn away. Not Charon's name. Someone else's. Maybe someone who rowed just once. Maybe someone who rowed every night and forgot by morning. The river laps gently against the hull. This time you don't board. You sit beside the dock and let your feet dangle into the dream water, which doesn't feel like water at all. It feels like time. Cool. Slow. Thick in places, like molasses. Thin in others, like thread pulled taut. You take the coin from your pouch. Turn it over. It's changed again. The surface now bears not an image, but a phrase etched so faintly you almost miss it. It was never about crossing. You smile. In that way dreamers smile when nothing makes sense but everything feels right. In the distance, soft bells begin to chime. You're not sure where they're coming from. Maybe from a temple. Maybe from a bakery. Maybe from that odd moment when your elbow brushes someone in a crowd and you both apologize at once, even though you never meet eyes. You stand, walk along the dock, past other coins left behind, tokens from other dreamers, a bus pass, a broken watch, a bracelet made of cereal box beads. And there, on a small bench beside the dock, sits a child. You don't approach. You simply sit next to them. They're swinging their legs and staring out over the water, humming something to themselves that might be the lullaby again, or might be the jingle from an ice cream truck. They blend easily at this hour. I had a dream, the child says suddenly, not turning to you. There was a man in a boat. He was sad, but nice. You nod. They reach into their pocket and hold out something. A gum wrapper folded into a boat. They place it on the dock beside them. You watch it unfold, literally. It reshapes itself mid-motion, turns into something new. A paper crane, then a coin, then a single feather drifting up into the warm dusk. I think he was waiting for someone, they add. You glance at the boat again. Still empty. Still ready. Maybe that's the point. Maybe Charon isn't always about endings. Maybe he waits so the rest of us don't have to. The child yawns. The bench is suddenly a bed. You watch as they curl beneath a blanket stitched with stars, a pillow made of questions they're not ready to ask yet. You stand. The dock is empty now, but you feel fuller than ever. In the sky, something shifts one last time, just a single star blinking 3 times, like a distant signal. It's time, not to end, but to return. You rise from the dock slowly, as though even your weight is drowsy now, pulled downward not by gravity, but by the gentle persuasion of stillness. The dreamscape is fading around the edges. not disappearing, just softening. Like the last 5 minutes of a movie you've seen 100 times, where you already know the words. And that's why it comforts you. There's nothing more to explain, no new mysteries to reveal, just one more crossing. But tonight it's not yours. Across the river now you see another boat arrive. This one not driven by Charon, not carved from myth, not echoing with coins or the rustle of cloaks. It's a simple boat, really. Wooden, unvarnished, curved like a cupped hand. Inside it is someone you once met. Maybe in a dream, maybe in a story told long ago, or a feeling that visited you while you were standing at a window one rainy afternoon. They step off the boat and smile at you. Not because they recognize you, no one ever quite does, but because your presence says, you're here. It's safe now. You can rest. They walk toward you, then past you, feet soundless on the dock, into a grove that wasn't there before. The leaves rustle without wind. The trees lean just slightly, as if listening. You don't follow. You don't need to. You turn instead to the boat, not to board, but to touch it. A thank you, perhaps, to the idea of passage itself. The vessel rocks under your hand, then settles. And from your palm, the coin slips. You don't catch it. It falls, gently, impossibly slowly, into the bottom of the boat, where it lands without a sound. Not clinking, not rolling, just landing. Ready. Because someone, someday, will need it. Someone you'll never meet, and yet you'll be there. In the coin, in the story. In the hush before sleep, when the world finally quiets enough to let in the fairy lights. Historians still argue whether the practice of dream guides ever truly existed, you murmur to no one, and everyone, or whether they were simply symbols created by tired minds hoping for gentle endings. You walk away from the dock. The stars are blinking more slowly now. The lullaby is almost done. The river behind you folds into itself, not vanishing, just waiting for the next name to whisper. And you rest. You breathe. You return. Not to waking, not just yet, but to stillness. To the soft, echoing hush of a story finished precisely where it should. Let the river fade now. Let the soft shape of the boat drift gently out of view. There's nothing left to carry tonight. Nothing to cross. You've made the journey, and it has made you lighter in the quietest ways. Breathe slowly now. Let the hush settle over you like a warm blanket. The kind tucked just so at the edges, where dreams can't quite escape and waking doesn't feel rushed. The coins are all placed. The names have been whispered. The ferry has glided on. And you are safe here, at the edge of myth and memory, where time slows just enough to let sleep catch up with you. There's no need to hold the story tightly. It's already found its home in you, gently tucked between your heartbeat and your breath. So rest now. Let your body sink just a little deeper into the mattress. Let your thoughts float like lanterns down a calm river. Let your dreams come quietly, not needing answers, only presence. Everything you carried has been set down, and everything you hoped to find has already found you. Sleep well, gentle soul. Charon will wait. He always does. Good night.